explain of that's integration. There is integration all the
Hello everyone, and welcome. In this session, we will talk about the differences and similarities between the two different approach, EFT, emotion-focused therapy, and TFP, transference-focused psychotherapy. There are different theoretical frameworks, there are different techniques, strategies, but in the end, they are trying to explain and understand the human behavior, thought, feelings, and we thought that maybe they have something in common, maybe have some similarities, and it is good to explore and think about the therapies to choose what is the best for our client, what is the best fit for our client, approaches. And then first, I will talk about the TFP, transference-focused psychotherapy. What is TFP? Its core principles. And after that, Bura Kalk will talk about EFT, what is it and its core principles, techniques, etc. And after that, Dr. Özakkaş will discuss the similarities between the two different approaches. Okay, let's start. What is TFP? Transference-focused psychotherapy, rooted in Otto Kernberg's modern contemporary object relations theory, is an evidence-based structured psychoanalytic psychotherapy model developed primarily for treating severe personality disorders, especially those at borderline personality organization level. TFP aims not just at symptom reduction, but at modifying the patient's underlying psychological structure, like all psychodynamic and psychoanalytic approaches. At its core, TFP views the human mind as a system of internalized object relations, that is, representation of self and others linked by an affect. Each of us carries within a set of internal relation templates formed early in life with our primary caregivers, the important person in our life. In borderline pathology, these templates are often split into polarized part, idealized and executory representations that cannot coexist. This leads to what Kernberg calls identity diffusion, a fragmented sense of self and others. It relies on the pathology. Identity diffusion is characterized by a failure to integrate representations of the self and the other, object. This results in an internal world composed of fragmented, contradictory, and polarized representations. The primary defense mechanism is splitting. The individual rigidly separates self and other representations into all good and all bad, opposed to manage anxiety and conflicts. In therapy, these representations are activated as dyads, idealized dyad and devalued dyad. Idealized is the all good self and all good object. Therapist, devalued dyad, all bad self and all bad object therapist. Aggression and love coexist within human nature, and these fundamental effects are meditated through internal object representations. Defenses such as splitting serve to manage ambivalent and conflicting emotions. Importantly, TFP views human nature as malleable. Through the therapeutic process, individuals can integrate fragmented self and object representations, enhancing their capacity for coherent self-experience and relational functioning. Instead, human beings are both relational constituted and capable of psychological growth and transformation. TFP's ultimate goal is the integration of the split, contradictory dyads by clarifying and confronting them as they manifest in the therapeutic relationship, the transference with the therapist. Achieving this integration allows the patient to perceive themselves and others as complex, realistic beings with both positive and negative attributes, leading to identity integration. In older psychoanalytic terms, Melanie Klein described, this shift is from the paranoid schizoid position to depressive position. And they use structural assessments. This assessment is conducted using Kandel's structural interview or its structured version, the STIPO. The interview examines the three fundamental dimensions. First, identity integration, second, defense mechanism, and the reality testing. Identity integration as the degree to which the patient's perception of self and others is coherent and integrated or not. Defense mechanism, whether the patient predominantly uses primitive defenses such as splitting, projective identification, denial, or they are using mature ones. Reality testing, the stability of the patient's contact with reality. Is the patient lives in the fantasy or in the reality? This structural approach is foundational to TFP, determining if the patient's organization is at borderline or not. And the treatment contract is the most important. It's one of the most important things in TFP. To manage impulse control issues and the risk of treatment sabotage, which is common in several personality disorders. TFP begins with a clear and complete contract with the therapist and the client. The contract outlines the frame of therapy. They usually do twice weekly sessions, and what is the fee, attendance, and specific rules for managing life-threatening behaviors such as suicide or self-harm. The contract serves as a reliable external frame that helps contain the patient's internal disorganization. Any breach of the contract is treated as an action that threatens the therapeutic relationship and is immediately interpreted to understand the patient's ambivalence about continuing the therapy. Furthermore, the contract often includes the patient's commitment to active participation in social roles and demonstrating that TFP is focused on both internal and external change, life change. And there are core strategies in TFP. One of them is technical neutrality, and the other is countertransference management. Technical neutrality is the therapist's effort to maintain equal distance from both sides of the patient's conflicting internal self and object representations as they appear in the transference. The therapist does not take sides, neither endorsing the patient's experience of themselves as an all good victim nor the therapist as an all bad aggressor. Counter-transference management, TFP views the intense emotional reactions the therapist develops in response to the patient's transference, not as an obstacle, but as a vital source of information for understanding the patient's split object relation dyads. The therapist is trained to recognize, analyze, and respond to these feelings while maintaining technical neutrality. And there are core techniques, there are three of them: clarification, confrontation, and interpretation. All TFP techniques focus on analyzing the patient's transference, which is the activation of an object relationship in the here and now relation with the therapist. The transference analysis process, the three of them. Clarification, making the patient's presented materials in therapy understandable and definable. Confrontation, drawing the patient's attention to the contradictions, inconsistencies, and polarizations in their material or the transference. And interpretation is the explaining that the revealed contradictory dyads represent the current activation and therapy of the patient's internalized split object relations from the past. And, the TFP is an empirical evidence-based. A significant random randomized trial conducted in Vienna compared to TFT with treatment provided by experienced community psychotherapists. The results demonstrated the TFP's significant disparity. Dropout rate, the TFP group had a significantly lower dropout rate than the TSB group. This highlights the effectiveness of TFP's structural frame and contract in retaining patients. Significantly fewer suicide attempts were observed in the TFP group, and TFP led to greater improvements not only in BPD symptoms but also in psychosocial functioning and personality organization, demonstrating structural change. And mechanism of change. One of TFP's core change mechanisms is a significant increase in the patient's capacity for reflective functioning, mentalization, which is the ability to interpret their own and others' behavior in terms of underlying mental states. Transference interpretation creates a space for the patient to make sense of the other person's mind, thereby strengthening their mentalization capacity. And what TFP therapists must be decisive in establishing a strict treatment contract at the beginning of the treatment, covering critical issues such as suicide, self-harm, session attendance, and fees, etc. This represents a reliable external order against the patient's internal chaos. And TFP therapists must approach contract breaches not as a disciplinary problem, but as material that should be interpreted to understand the patient's ambivalence about continuing the therapy. And TFP therapists must possess the skill to accurately determine the patient's level of personality organization using tools like the structure for humanistic therapy, which TFP therapists must not become emotionally entangled or fixated with any of the patient's conflicting and polarized emotional and cognitive representations. And TFP therapists must focus on the phenomenon of transference, how the patient's past relational patterns are activated in the here and now interaction with the therapist. Therapists must consistently bring the patient's material back to this core information. And TFP therapists must have the ability to recognize, analyze, and use intense emotional reactions elicited by the patient as a vital source of information to understand which specific aspects of the patient's internal world are being projected while maintaining neutrality. And the therapeutic goals. The therapeutic task in TFP is to help the patients integrate these little parts to move from fragmentation to a cohesive and stable identity. This process happens within the transference as these internal relationships, relational patterns are reenacted in the therapy relationship itself. The therapist becomes temporarily the object of both love and hatred, idealization and manipulation. Through clarification, confrontation, and interpretation, the therapist helps the patients see and hold together both sides of this internal drama. This is not a purely intellectual process. It's emotional, affectively charged, and often painful. But through repeated understanding and reflection, the patient begins to experience themselves and others in a more integrated way. In conclusion, TFP, grounded in Greenberg's object relations theory, is an empirically validated treatment method. It utilizes a structural assessment and a clear contract frame, centering on the rigorous analysis of transference. TFP aims to modify both the symptoms and the underlying psychological structure of severe personality disorders. And now Burakal will talk about the EFT, emotion-focused therapy, what is it, its principles and emotions. And after that, we will come back to their differences and similarities. Yeah.
Hi everyone, my name is Burak. I'm a psychologist. In the sessions, I will explain the general principles of emotion-focused therapy. Emotion-focused therapy, EFT, is an experiential and humanistic approach that emphasizes the role of emotion as a center for psychotherapeutic change. Emotions are not only subjective experiences, but also a fundamental system through which individuals can change their needs, development, and lives. Emotions serve the functions of preparing individuals for adaptive behavior, providing information about needs and explanations, and enabling the expression of internal states. EFT works with issues such as anxiety, identity, attention, eating disorders, and post-traumatic stress disorder. It typically lasts between 20 and 24 sessions. EFT offers a fundamentally positive, emotional, and integrative view of human nature. It defines humans not only by their biological drives, but also by their creativity, awareness, and capacity for choice. Humans are viewed as dynamic self-regulatory systems driven by survival and growth, constantly interacting with their environment. Emotions are fundamental guides that enable individuals to understand what is good and what is bad and to develop adaptive actions. In this approach, motivation is not simply the pursuit of pleasure, but also the pursuit of emotional regulation and meaning. People strive for deeper goals, such as meaning, value, love, justice, and freedom, as well as happiness. Thus, EFT advocates an understanding of I feel, therefore I am, rather than I think, therefore I am. EFT originated in the humanistic phenomenological tradition and was influenced by Carl Rogers' client-centered therapy and the experiential approach of Gestalt therapy. It centers on the individual subject, experience, empathy, and acceptance. By combining this foundation with modern theories of emotion, affective neuroscience, attachment, and narrative theory, EFT offers an integrative therapeutic approach that aims to recognize and transform emotion and create new narrative meanings. According to EFT, emotional schemas are dynamic internal structures that bypass experiences and integrate emotional, cognitive, and somatic elements. These structures guide behavioral tendencies and emotional meanings as an individual interacts with their environment. The self-regulations formed by the interaction of these schemas shape the individual's higher-level subjective experiences, such as feeling worthless or feeling insecure. Consistent with the approach of Gestalt theories, EFT views the not as fixed structure, but as a dialectical and self-regulatory process that emerges in the continuous interaction of the organism and the environment. Fundamentals of dysfunction: 1. Lack of awareness. 2. Maladaptive emotional schemas. 3. Emotional regulation and dysregulation. 4. Difficulties with narrative structuring and existential meaning making. Neurobiological evidence: memory and the past play a central role in verbal emotions. According to traditional memory theories, information is first processed in short-term memory and then becomes permanent and unchangeable when transferred to long-term memory. However, in the last 20 years, the process of memory reconciliation has come to the fore. During this process, activated memories are combined with new experiences and assimilated into the past. Research has shown that each time a memory record is activated, it becomes unstable again and enters a restructuring process. This period provides an opportunity to modify the memory. For example, Nadar et al. Found that inhibiting restructuring can eliminate conditioned fear and wrath. Similarly, in humans, it has been shown that when memories are reactivated with reminders, they are susceptible to correction by the subsequent presentation of material that was incorporated into the original event memory. Because memory reconstruction only occurs through activation, emotional memories must first be evoked before they can be transformed in therapy. Greenberg emphasized that if a new emotional experience occurs approximately 10 minutes after the activation of a memory, this experience can be incorporated into memory and alter the original memory. Thus, all memories are updated within the same environment of the therapeutic relationship and through the client's adaptive responses using their new resources. This process is seen as a neurobiological basis for therapeutic change in transforming past emotional injuries. At the core of change lies experiential process rather than conceptual explanations. A prerequisite for emotional transformation is for the client to access and confront painful emotions and engage in the harmonious emotional experience. When old memories are activated unmet, needs are revived and transformed through new emotions. New experiences not only weaken the influence of old memories, but also reshape the individual's narratives about themselves and their lives, thus transforming identity construction through the diversity of accessible emotional memories. In EFT, the therapist facilitates this transformation empathically and experientially. They accompany the clients challenging emotions, enabling them to be expressed and accepted. Verbalizing emotional service and adaptive and regulatory function. However, true change occurs not only through acceptance, but also through the experience of new emotions. By deeply engaging with the client's subjective world, the therapist facilitates the replacement of painful emotions from the past with transformative and healing emotional experience. Thus, change emerges as an experiences-based phenomenological process rather than insight. In EFT, the process requires a focus on the individual's personal experience. The therapist, without separating from someone close to the client's current emotional experience, ensures the acceptance of information, integration of expression, and transformation. This method aims to modify and experience what is suggested, leading to therapeutic healing. In EFT, change occurs through the here and now experience. The therapist remains empathically present throughout this process, listening to client's emotional rhythm. It is process-oriented and grounded in phenomenology. The therapist focuses on the direct experience of individual life and experience. The client is viewed as a dynamic, self-organizing emotional processing system. The therapist's primary role in this therapy is to anticipate and refine the next step in the client's emotional process. In process orientation, the client is informed not only about what was not done, but also when it was done for therapeutic effectiveness. Direct confrontation with the client in the therapeutic relationship, especially by early exposure to discrepancies between what the client says and does or problematic behaviors, can easily position the therapist as an auditorium and knowledgeable expert. This can lead to defensiveness in the client, complicating the therapeutic process. Therefore, empathy, rather than confrontation, but protects the therapeutic alliance and ensures the client feels understood. In EFT, empathic understanding is the therapist's ability to visually enter the inner world of the conversation and verbally reflect it. Empathic attunement, on the other hand, focuses on sensing and reflecting the emotion of this disruption. The client's experience of a truly felt experience allows for emotional regulation and experience. By sensitively attuning to the client's emotional states, the therapist establishes a connection beyond words in EFT, and this connection enhances the transformation of the client's emotional pain. Basic therapy skills: 1. Therapy stance and communication. An authentic warm, empathic, and accepting attitude allows the client to express their feelings safely. A calm and non-judgmental tone of voice strengthens the therapeutic relationship. 2. Ability to sit with emotion. The therapist must be able to witness and remain with the client's painful emotions. The goal is not to provide a solution, but to open space for the acceptance and experiences of emotions. This requires the therapist to develop their own emotional awareness. 3. Self-awareness and self-regulation. The therapist's emotional awareness and ability to distinguish countertransference support the client's active participation and emotional awareness, thereby strengthening therapeutic genuineness. 4. Cultural sensitivity. Emotions are universal, but their expressions vary across cultures. The therapist should consider the client's cultural identity and behavior of their own biases while adapting to culturally appropriate emotional experience. 5. Facilitative expression and tone of voice. The therapist's soft and affirming voice enhances the client's emotional change and changes the way his or her atmosphere transforms. Basic immersion techniques. The empathy chair technique. It allows the client to uncover and process unfinished emotional process. In this technique, the client imagines themselves in front of significant other and engages in dialogue, allowing them to express and transform their emotion in a safe environment. The double chair technique. Use it to work through internal conflicts. Different parts of the client's self, for example, the critical and defensive parts speak from separate chairs. The feelings and needs of each side become visible, supporting a more harmonious relationship between the parties and the formation of an integrated self. And focusing, it involves the client noticing and integrating their emotions and bodily sensation. The process supports discovering the source of emotions, safely expressing repressed feelings, and emotional physical integration. Thank you.
Now we will continue to their differences, and we made a table about that. They have different theoretical foundation. TFB is rooted in contemporary object relations theory, integrating the works of Fairbairn, Melanie, and Greenberg. It views personality as structured around internalized self-object relations and their associated effects. And EFT is based on humanistic, experiential, and process experiential traditions, primarily influenced by Carl Rogers and Gestalt therapy. It emphasizes emotional processing as key to the change, And their view of human nature are different. TFB views human nature as shaped by early relational experiences and internalized object relations that influence current perception and behavior. It focuses on the integration of split of self and object representation, while EFT views the human nature as inherently growth-oriented and self-actualizing. Emotional experiences are considered adaptive source of information and transformation when properly accessed. TFP's the exploration and interpretation of the transference relation as the central vehicle for understanding and integrating fragmented self-states. EFT, the identification, deepening, and transformation of maladaptive emotional schemes through experiential work in the present moment. Role of emotion. In TFP, emotions are seen as expression of internalized object relations. The focus is on understanding their origins and meanings within relational patterns. In EFT, emotions are primary guides that enable humans to adapt to their environments. In EFT, emotions are viewed as adaptive resources that help us understand our needs. In TFP, the transference relationship is the primary focus and main field of analysis. The therapist maintains a stance of neutrality, interpreting projections and enactments as they emerge. In EFT, the therapeutic relationship is characterized by empathy, authenticity, and acceptance, serving as a secure base for emotional exploration. The therapist is actively emotionally engaged with client. In TFP, change occurs through the integration of split of self and object representations, leading to a more coherent and realistic sense of self and others. In EFT, change occurs through emotional awareness, expression, and transformation of maladaptive emotional responses into adaptive ones. In TFP, the therapist is analytic, interpretive, and containing. The therapist helps the patient recognize and integrate discerned aspects of the self within the transference. In EFT, the therapist is emotionally engaged, facilitative, and validating. The therapist helps clients access and regulate core emotions to promote self-compassion and growth. Their techniques are different. TFP focus on interpretation of transference, clarification, and confrontation. And EFT, the use of experiential techniques such as chair work, focusing, and evocative unfolding to access and transform emotions. Yes, they have differences. They have different theoretical frameworks, but they share something in common. In both approaches, the therapeutic relationships serve as a secure space where emotions and mental states can be safely explored and experienced, like all therapies. In both therapies, emotionally intense re-experiencing leads to the reconciliation of existing schemas or internal object representations. In EFT, maladaptive emotional schemas schemas are activated and transformed through the introduction of new adaptive emotional experience. In TFP, on the other hand, all the internal object representations are revised in the transference relationships through the patient's new experience with the therapist. These two processes can be both understood in terms of memory reconciliation mechanism at the neural level, which Dr. Özakkaş will talk about, through the reactivation of emotional memory and the integration of new emotional information. Both approaches aim for experiential transformation rather than purely cognitive understanding. In EFT, this is captured by the concept of experiencing, the deep emotional processing and transformation that occurs when feelings are fully accessed. In TFP, similar change occurs through interpretation and containment, helping the patient tolerate, verbalize, and meaning of emotional experience. In both cases, the conscious processing of emotion facilitates a greater sense of self-integration. In EFT, the therapeutic relationship provides an empathic and safe space where emotions can be experienced and transformed. In TFP, the relationship becomes the stage on which transference is reenacted and worked through analytically. Thus, in both therapies, the therapist-patient relationship offers a collective emotional experience, allowing past relational patterns to be recognized in the present. And finally, both approaches are consistent with modern neuroscience. Emotional processing can be understood through the dynamic interaction among the amygdala, hippocampus, and prefrontal cortex. Memory reconciliation, in turn, involves emotional reactivation followed by new learning that updates existing representations. EFT and TFP both conceptualize psychological change not merely as a cognitive insight, but is a reorganization at the level of emotional memory and relational experience. In essence, while their languages and techniques differ, both approaches aim at the same goal, the integration of self through energy transformation within a healing relationship. Thank you for listening us. Now Tahir Özakkaş will continue their similarities, focusing on memory consolidation and mentalization.
Teşekkür ederim. Thank you very much. Emine her şeyi anlattı aslında. Benim anlatacak bir şeyim kalmadı. Emine mentioned about all process. That's I want to say these things, the similar things. But I try to tell and mention these process. I didn't find my slide first panel conference. I know now, I find now, so the same slides. I tried to firstly, I want to speak about the different approach. All approach two basic, two line. One of them insight-oriented psychotherapies, the others is experiential psychotherapies. Insight-oriented psychotherapies, mostly we use prefrontal cortex, cortical area, so that we try to find meaning all these process. So that behavioral cognitive therapy, psychoanalysis, psychoanalytic psychotherapy, supportive psychoanalytic psychotherapy, Masterson approach, and TFP, insight-oriented psychotherapy. These groups. Basic aspect these psychotherapy groups. They believe if you have any symptoms or any patient has some symptoms, if you understanding, if you kavramak neydi? Bana söyle bakayım.
Understand.
No.
Kavramak.
Deeply understanding. Deeply understanding, then cognitive therapy and psychoanalysis and psychoanalytic psychotherapy solve all these problems. But we didn't believe. I didn't believe, because there is different mechanism in our brain, deeply brain, so that we can look all literature about this issue, so that consolidation, reconsolidation is very important for memory. Memory, all psychotherapy, it is important. I want to summarize this process. I am TFP therapist. At the same time, I am EFT therapist. This is 180-degree different. But in my mind, the same things. Same things. This road, two roads, top and down roads, down and top roads. Corner stone, amygdala and hippocampus. If you decide top of down, cortical area, meanings, and experiential area, so that cornerstone, hippocampus, amygdala, and prefrontal relation. If you experiential therapies, you try to experiential, so that down to top. For example, your feelings, your affects. This is very important. Humanistic approach. The cornerstone is amygdala and hippocampus and relation, prefrontal cortex and body. So that I am two different therapists, sometimes insight-oriented therapists, sometimes experiential therapists. How do I solve these conflicts in my mind? It is very important. If you have authentic translations, so that no problems. Because sometimes cognitively or insight-oriented perspective, sometimes experiential perspective, suddenly here and now emerge in our mind, in our sessions. I look my old sessions to today. Mostly, I decided here and now sometimes insight-oriented interpretation, sometimes clarification, sometimes confrontation, sometimes empathically cover. How do I decide these processes? I don't know. Spontaneity, authentic. Then that session succeeds session. If I authentic person in the session. Why are they different approach in the psychotherapy area? I suppose similar ideologic perspective. My approach, your approach, their approach. My approach is very, very good. I look on the top, these approach, 90% the same, 10% different. So that I decide I am an integrative psychotherapist. Different terms, different approach. For example, you know Paul Wachter, it is important in the CEPI, founder of the CEPI. One day he decided behavioral therapy, bad therapies. So then I work on the behavioral therapy, good therapy, psychoanalytic therapy. He decided, he began to write a book about the behavioral therapy, anti-behavioral therapy. So that he understand deeply behavioral therapy, many terms, dissimilar psychoanalytic approach, different terms, the same things. Repression different, denial different, all human behavior, human thinking, different terms give us. So that he decided many famous psychotherapy theories. Please come here. We discuss these processes on the table, round table, so that Paul Wachter speak to Marvin Goldfried. Marvin Goldfried, famous behavioral and cognitive therapist in the US, United States, and he accepted this invite. So that together, first meeting, approximately 20-person congress, first congress in the separate congress. I believe psychoanalytic approach. You believe behavioral cognitive approach. The same terms, it must be common factor, these process, so that they decided together, CEPI founders. Now I try to understand the different approach this panel. One of them, one hand, insight-oriented psychotherapy, the famous now current psychoanalytic psychotherapy, object relation theory, transference focus psychotherapy. It is very, very famous now because in the science, in the university. The other hand, experiential therapy, experiential need therapy, EFT, emotion focused therapy, emotion focused therapy. Emotion focused therapists don't believe insight-oriented psychotherapy, psychoanalytic psychotherapy, psychoanalysis, psychoanalytic psychotherapy, don't believe to experiential therapy because neutral position, empathic position, very, very different. But in the session, sometimes neutral position is necessary. Sometimes empathic position necessary. Sometimes supportive position is necessary in the session. The same session is first 5 minutes, it is necessary supportive. The other 5 minutes, cognitive meaning. The other 5 session may be neutrality because sometimes it is necessary boundary, patient and me, patient and therapist. If anyone, if therapists succeed or decide this process on time, just on time, good therapists, integrative therapists. My aspect. I came here, I read these slides, but not authentic. Because I want to speak simple or fluence, doğru söylemiyorum, akıcı. Fluence. It is very stuck to speak in mind. So that if you permit Turkish language, I speak very much, more much. And authentic. Authentic relationship, very good. Wrong, true, important, not important. Authentic relationship, human to human. It is very, very good things for us in the relationship, in the session. If this arayüze ne diyorduk? Interface. This slide interface, you and me, it is very bad. This good presentation, thank you very much.
But you are right.
If you and your patients interface for relationship, it is very big problem for therapeutic process, my aspect. If you authentically, your patient to you, all patients give us affetmek neydi? Forgive. If you wrong, hardly sleep, but they want only authentically, true self, real self. If you real self, if you true self in the session, no problem. Don't know anything. You don't know anything. You don't know technical therapy. If you authentic and emotional regulation inside, good therapist, famous therapist, more good therapist. So that I try to succeed all session in the therapeutic process. When I authentically have in insight this session, it's very succeed. Not authentically, technically, I earn money, no problem. Because everything is good, but not good. Did you understand?
Yeah.
Okay. Ne varmış bakayım şuraya. Doldurdum 10 dakikayı.
Biraz daha.
Ne kadar da
Devam hocam.
Peki, şuraya bir bakalım. Historical and Scientific Framework. O 17. 18. yüzyıldan başlamış. 17th and 18th centuries. Enlightenment time. The human mind and biology begin to be explained as natural phenomena within the framework of mechanical and deterministic principles. Revolution of the 19th and 20th century. Darwin, theory of evolution. It is very important point. Freud, psychoanalytic theory, new dimension in scientific study of behavior, subconscious, non-conscious, unconscious process. Paulo, classical condition, foundation of behaviorism. It is important, this slide for me, integration of neuroscience and psychotherapy. Have neurons that fire together, wire together. It is important, very important sentence. Neurons that fire together, wire together. Neural base of learning. And then Eric Kandel wrote that psychotherapy can alter synaptic connection. Nobel Prize, you know. Paradigm, psychotherapy is not just talking, it is a biological process that alters the brain's psychochemical structure. Approximately 30 years ago, I had a conference in the Kayseri city. I said participant, I said audience, guests, all words medication. All words medication for the others and you. Because all words and sentence say anything, all imagination, all these process electrically, neurobiologically, and chemical reaction. All words now, I speak to you so that your minds, electromagnetic, chemical, and different position, different situation in your mind. So that this is all of them medical. If you accept medicine, accept any tablet, they work the same things. It is true. True sentence, true words, here and now, similar, accepted medicine. Similar. Modern approach, humans are both biological beings and a psychological world composed of memories, beliefs, emotions, and meanings. Integrative framework from reductionism to synthesis. Required perspective, not reductionist, but an integrative systems understanding. Why? The brain is an organ shaped by social and emotional context. It is very important, this social and emotional context, brain. Goal that addresses the how and why question in psychotherapy within a synthesis of biological and psychological responses. Common neurobiologic mechanism, neurobiologic common pathway, seemingly different emotion focused therapy and transverse focused psychotherapy targets similar neurobiological outcome chains to affect emotional change mostly. Core common mechanism, hippocampal reconsolidation, strengthen prefrontal limbic connection, activation of neuron plasticity. You know, borderline personality disorders, lower level, prefrontal cortex neuronal network, poor, but amygdala and hippocampus neuronal network very highly activated. If you succeed prefrontal cortex neuronal activation high level, and amygdala and hippocampus, these area low activation. This is therapeutic process, therapeutic goal. Neural conceptualization of pathology, LeDoux'un modeli. Pathology now, not just psychological conflict, but also the inability of the prefrontal cortex higher level regulation to control the amygdala lower level responses. Amygdala hyperactivity, excessive activation of the amygdala and hypoactivation of the prefrontal cortex in borderline person that I mentioned now. Common neural targets of therapies goal to restore this disrupted balance. Emotion-focused psychotherapy aims to strengthen prefrontal limbic connections by promoting access to primary adaptive emotions. TFP, transference-focused psychotherapy, aims to develop similar prefrontal regulatory capacity by increasing mentalization within the transference relation. Mentalization, it is very important. Fonagy and Bateman approach, mentalization approach. TFP work together mentalization groups, Fonagy and Greenberg. Neuroimaging evidence, both processes lead to increased activity in the anterior cingulate cortex and ventromedial prefrontal cortex and decreased amygdala reactivity. Hippocampal reconsolidation mechanism, the therapeutic process activates pathological memory networks stored in the hippocampus. TFP here and now activated aggression, EFT from gentling, focusing on the body so that activating memory, mostly traumatic memory, the same things. Change the safe therapeutic environment support the idea that old memory trace can be reprocessed and change reconsolidated. Theoretical differences, basic theoretical origins. Everyone mentioned to me and Nura. I am old man. I'm 5 man. And my daughter went to Japanese. Okay. Now, this is manipulative. Instrumental emotion. Transfer-focused psychotherapy, theoretical origin, psychoanalytic observation theory, developed based on Greenberg's theory, Melanie Klein from Melanie Klein observation theory. Core focus, reenactment and interpretation of internalized pathological relation, in the therapeutic relationship. Transference and counter-transference process. Emotion-focused therapy, theoretical origin, humanistic extension perspective, Rogers, Gestalt therapy, emotion therapy, phenomenologic approach, phenomenologic existentialist approach, mostly EFT. Primary focus, access to primary emotion and adaptive function of the emotion and emotional regulation mechanism. Emotion change to emotion. Emotion change, emotion. This is synthesis. It is very important, different aspects. Radical difference conceptualized emotion. Freud historical base of EFT, TFP. Emotion is the psychic manifestation of an instinctual drive, pleasure seeking, selfish pursuit based on the pleasure principle. Drive conflict theory, id and ego conflict theory, basic aspect. Emotion-focused psychotherapy Greenberg model. Emotion is an evolutionarity. Please.
Evolutionary.
Evolutionary. Sen söyle bakayım.
Evrimsel.
Evrimsel öğrensinler Türkçeyi biraz. Hep biz mi öğreneceğiz? Emotion is an evolutionary, evrimsel, encoded adaptive behavioral tendency aimed at survival and social bonding. 7 basic emotion: fear, anger, sadness, shame, disgust, joy, surprise. They are functional for survival. Anesthetic psychopathology, TFP object relation theory, source of pathology, internalized dysfunctional object relation structures and the splitting mechanisms, core conflict area, conflict between fragmented self and object representation at the interpersonal level, transference, emotion focused therapy, emotion based, source of pathology, primary adaptive emotional system dysfunction resulting from empathic unresponsiveness, trauma and emotional deprivation in early childhood. Core conflict area, the individual's own internal experience, maladaptive emotional schemas and secondary emotions. Example of secondary emotions: anger masking, sadness. Salon konferansta var mıydınız?
Yetişemedim.
Okay. Bundan çok bahsettim de tekrara kaçmayayım diye. I ask first conference in this panel if you come to first speakers for presentation. I don't want to mention this process. Clinical application and technical differences. Burada süre doldu diyor Emine.
10 dakika.
Bana mı yazacaksın sen onu? Sen benim kim olduğumu biliyor musun? Sen benim kim olduğumu biliyor musun demiş hostese. Hostes bağırmış uçağa. Bu arkadaş kim olduğunu bilmiyormuş, bilen var diye. Therapist position and relational emphasis. TFP, therapist position neutral, observant and interpretive. Yani it is insight-oriented therapy. It's Newton physiotherapist. Objective: the stand at an equal distance from all parts of the client's mental structure to interpret the transference and to help integrate fragmented parts. Agent of change, interpretation of the therapeutic relationship itself, analysis of the transference, emotion focused therapy. Therapist position: a more active, empathetic, and accepting position. Purpose: to identify the client's emotional needs, address these needs directly during the session, and rebuild an authentic self by connecting with primary adaptive emotions. Agent of change: the client's awareness and regulation of their own internal emotional experience. Differences: clinical techniques, structured interventions and interpretation for TFP, activates high-level function of the orbitofrontal cortex by strengthening mentalization within the transference relationship and restructuring and self-relationship patterns. Transference interpretation reviews and interprets the individual's past object relationships based on the here and now principles. Emotion-focused techniques, empty chair dialogue and double chair, aim to stretch rigid patterns in neural circuits by targeting the reconciliation of emotional memory and the prefrontal limbic system interaction. Focus: working with significant figures outside in the individual parents, spouses, using chair techniques. Spouses ne? Şey yazmış ama. Bilen var mı?
Nişanlı gibi yani. Nişanlı durumda.
Çift. Couple yani.
Couple.
Nasıl yazmışız? Competition and discussion. Common healing factor: while theoretical knowledge and techniques contribute only 10-12% to therapeutic healing, the effect of the therapeutic alliance is 30 to 50 from Norcross, psychotherapy systems books. Main factor of healing: it is not the techniques used, but the special relationship established between the therapist and client. Role of the therapeutic relationship: provides a safe neurobiological regulatory environment, acts as a stage where unresolved internal conflicts are reenacted, provides the necessary reflective space to view experiences from a new perspective. Final synthesis integration. Emotion-focused therapy and TFP, although they appear different at the first glance, they essentially target the same healing mechanism and use similar process. neurobiological pathway, both aim to enhance the regulatory function of the prefrontal cortex and reduce the excessive reactivity of the limbic system. The key point, it is important to identify the common therapeutic elements among different approaches and use them flexibility according to client's needs. Melike bu sana cevap veriyor mu? Ha? Aydın gittim.
Bakalım hocam.
Senin için yazdım bunu.
Beraber.
The key point, it is important to identify the common therapeutic elements among the different approaches and use them flexibly according to client's needs.
Yes, this was the exact thing that I want to mention.
Okay. The future of psychotherapy, it will take shape on an integrative ground where the objective language of neuroscience and the subjective language of human experience complement each other without excluding one another. Thank you very much attention. No question, no answer, no comment. If you want any question, please write us. Please tell, okay. Except Greece.
Yes, Greece is here. I have to congratulate the two young colleagues of us for their awesome presentation, but authentically speaking, I have to say that I enjoy your speech, but the first part, the non-slide part, well, the most important thing is what he says today to us, that, and it's a rhetoric question to you actually, you, in a very simple way, you explain how psychotherapy is and how psychotherapy moved through the years. You explain us that in two pathways, within two basic pathways, we can go to the same target, to the change, to the treatment. And I was wondering, well, while you was explaining that in such a simple way, if the old generation, us, have to keep the young colleagues to experience the same trip, or if we have the duty to explain them or to give them more information how to choose the right moment, which therapeutic elements to use. You explained very well that no matter which technique we use, this is not important, and that the most important thing is the authenticity, and you are very right to that. But again, when they listen you talking about it and about the authenticity, do you think that that will be helpful for them or not? Shall you leave them to live the trip and understand how to become authentic? Or is time for us to give them some more directions about the therapeutic elements? This is more rhetoric questions to you, but I definitely agree with everything you said in the first part.
What do you think?
Asking me, I really would like them to enjoy the same trip that we had.
For example, this generation, it is a new generation. So that, what do you say them for 3 roads?
Well, authenticity is the core, and I do agree with you. But how to choose the elements? Well, it's something that I think we have to give them some guidelines. Some guidelines, explain them that techniques are not so important, and you are very right, you give the percentage, they are not more than
necessary guidelines, the new generation.
Yes, give them some guidelines for the basic therapeutic elements, for the common factors.
For example, attack therapy. Okay, thank you. Thank you. I try to answer my mind. If anyone, any therapist candidate can decide his mind, some of them, mostly cognitive working, some of them emotional working, some of them bodily sensation, so that they begin their inner world, inner mind world. If you have cognitively mentalization, so that they begin cognitive therapy, psychoanalytic therapy. If emotional person, so that they empathically, self-psychology, intersubjective area, experiential therapy, phenomenologic therapy, humanistic therapy, decide. Some of them bodily sensation, it is very feeling the other body and phenomenon body, so that they begin the sensational therapeutic process. The end of the road together, integration, all years duration. My mind, I aspect, yeah. Thank you very much. All right, thank you. Teşekkürler arkadaşlar. Thank you very much for your attention. Efendim bana vakit verdiği için sağ olun.